Good morning, guys. I think everyone is new, and this is the first session to everyone, I hope. Okay, so first of all, I'm introducing myself. I'm Krishna Chaitanya. I'm working as a senior architect. I have 10 years of experience as a full stack developer. I worked on multiple technologies like front end, back end, and middleware, all this stuff. So that's simply about me. And I worked on multiple companies. Currently, I'm in on-site in Dubai. Okay, fine. Then I'm going to start now. So here I will start from the basic idea about software. What is software and all? See, what is software when you starting any coding? Before that, we need to understand some basic steps. Software is the definition we can say. Software is anybody can say like a set of programs. It is software simply. Okay, so what is program again? Program means program contains set of instructions. Okay, what are that instructions? Normally computer understand bytes like zeros and ones. Okay, so these zeros and ones, how it will be understand? Because we have compilers. That compiler will be converted into our computer understanding language. Okay, these are the basic steps. If somebody asks non-IT people, what you guys write programming, what's programming, at least you have to tell this thing. Computer understand only zeros and ones. We will write some programming. That programming will be converted into programming understanding language, right? So again, why we have to categorize our software into different categories like application software and system software. So why means because system software, we have to understand what is system software and application software, right? So system software it contains instruction to work any particular system. For example, operating system. If you take example, operating system means Linux or Windows, and we have a number of operating systems. Okay, mainframes operating system and all. So these are the example for system software. But application software means, for example, if you take PDF and we have what you call Tally software, and also we have this Microsoft applications, Windows, Word, and all, Microsoft Office. All those are some examples for application software. Okay, means application software runs under system software. Okay, system software is particularly example I told you, Linux operating system, whatever operating system if you take, those are like system softwares. Okay, again, application softwares, we have different kind of application. Okay, what are the different category of application software? Two category we can say. One is desktop applications, one is web applications. Desktop applications means it not required any what you call internet. For example, if you open Microsoft Word, you don't need any internet, right? So it can be just running in your desktop, that's all. But if you want to open any website, web application means any, for example, students portal. Suppose you want to check your exam results, you want to open some URL, you will connect and you will search for that. Okay, so web application required internet, right? So we are completely focusing in web applications. Now in web application also we have different categories like mobile applications, and also now mobile apps, and also we have nowadays like responsive designing and responsive applications. What is responsive web application means? Your application should be compatible with all the devices, right? For example, you are opening your application in different browsers, that is browser compatibility, and also your application will be open in different category of sizes like desktop, TV, or laptop or tablet. Okay, so you can open in any kind of screen size. That is called a responsiveness. So the responsiveness should be like screen size based on browser also, like Mozilla, Chrome, and Internet Explorer and mobile browsers. Because mobile browsers, some browsers, whatever desktop browsers will support some features, mobile browsers don't support. Okay, so sometime it is very important, you have to be take care about compatibility of browsers also. Okay, means mobile browsers, because some companies requirement your application should work in if they open in mobile also, because nowadays everybody using mobiles. So the important thing is, and your application should work in mobile first. There is two category of application development nowadays, mobile first or desktop first, but business now looking for mobile first. because everybody using mobile. So that's why now the concept of implementing any application is mobile first, means your application should run first mobile, then it works in desktop. That is a concept coming the all the companies mobile first concept. Okay, so for this understanding we need to understand single page applications. Okay, means what is single page application? Before you have to understand there is a concept of old way of doing and what is a new way of doing. Okay, so again we are talking about this all completely front end side. Okay, so we need to understand architecture of our web application, how it works. Okay, so web application required, actually we have mainly three, we can say three phases, categories. What is that? One is client side, and one more is backend, and third one is databases. So to implement any web application, we required these three things. Okay, whenever we are talking about client means, okay, we will say browser. Okay, and also that browser we can say UI side. UI means user interface, because user interact with the application through our web browser. Okay, whenever in the terminology, whenever in further classes we talk about client side or browser side or UI side. Okay, so these three are commonly. UI means user inter, for example you are entering some hall ticket number and hitting the button, right? So user interacting with the application through the user interface called buttons or text boxes, whatever. Okay, so the basic thing is to interact with user is browser. Browser is required to execute web application. Web application means simply it is HTML page. Okay, so client side programming, normally what are things required? Basic things: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, so in these three, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, basic components in the browser. Okay, HTML will give you the some basic skeleton about your web page. Okay, the basic skeleton of your web page will come with HTML. HTML is hypertext markup language. Okay, then JavaScript will give you behavior of your application. Means suppose some human being is there, human being requires some behavior, right? That behavior, how it will comes, for example when you click on some button, we need to do some action. That actions will be defined using JavaScript. And CSS, it will give you appearance. Appearance means some coloring and layout. Suppose you want to keep some button at the top or middle, right, or like that, we want to keep it some positioning of your HTML elements, how you will give through CSS. So HTML, CSS, JavaScript are the basic things to implement any web application at the client side, right? That is clear. Now we will go, after understanding these three concepts, we will go different frameworks like React.js and Angular and Vue.js. What is the difference between these frameworks? Why React.js? Why Angular.js? And what is the advantage of using React, and what is the advantage of Angular? What is the disadvantage with Angular when you use? So you have to understand while implementing any application, you need to know the about disadvantages and advantages both. Then you can choose based on your requirement which will suitable for you, right? That is important, because somebody says Angular is good, no need to use Angular always. Somebody says React, means it's based on context and requirement, you need to decide your frameworks. Okay, so why we need these frameworks means we need to understand before some basic stuff like what is framework, what is library. Okay, framework means it is giving you the some predefined structure of your project. When you use this framework, it will give some advantages like performance, testing, modularity, and easy of coding. Those kind of some advantages will be available when you use framework. Okay, and when you use libraries only thing, one thing, libraries will give you simplify your functionality. For example, you write 1,000 lines of code in JavaScript. Instead of that, while using some library, you no need to write thousands lines of code and complex logic. They will give everything is ready-made code and logic. You just call one function, they will tell this is the syntax, you call the function, then we will give this functionality. So library is like that. Library is just kind of abstraction of your code into simplified code. They will give only call 2-3 lines of code to use that one. Okay, but framework is not like that. Framework contains different kind of structure of your project, layout, some formats. Okay, you have to understand difference between framework and library, because React.js is a library, AngularJS is a complete framework. Okay, you can use React with Angular also. Some people don't know React means React. We can use combination of React and Angular also. Okay, so there is a difference. Angular is completely coming with all the concepts like routing, and routing means, you know, we have to understand single page application before I'm going for routing, and all these are like interlinked. Okay, so in further classes I will explain all the concept in Angular, what will come, what is dependency injection, what is modules, all those concepts. Before that, to understand, we need some basic concepts in JavaScript, HTML, all those stuff, because when you're starting Angular or Node.js or any frameworks, we have to know very strong basics in JavaScript first. Okay, so we will mostly focus on in our classes initial days completely deep understanding of object-oriented JavaScript, because object-oriented JavaScript not an easy, it's very complex. If you are good in JavaScript object-oriented concept, you can able to work on any kind of framework. Okay, so in that concept actually we will understand about objects and ES6. What are the latest features like let constant, and we have what you call variable declaration. What is the difference between let and constant and normal var, because JavaScript variables will be defined by using var keyword. Okay, but in latest JavaScript we will not use var keyword. Instead of that, we will use let and constant. Why we'll use let and constant? What are the advantages? Okay, you have to understand that, because constant means normally when you declare any variable in JavaScript, we will use const constant. Okay, you can't you should not override the value of constant. That is a basic principle when you use constant. Okay, because we have some disadvantages while using var keyword. Okay, there is a function, a variable scopes also, the global scope and local scope. Okay, because to understand this concept, you have to know first of all what are data types, what is meaning of variable. We have to understand in depth of data types, everything, to understand what is the disadvantage with var keyword and all. Okay, so again, I'm just not going deep about JavaScript, but what are the concepts we are going to touch is object-oriented concepts, and how you can create class in JavaScript. Okay, and what is constructors, and what are the object-oriented concepts like abstraction, inheritance, because when you say any programming language object-oriented means it has to follow 4 rules. Okay, so those rules are like inheritance, abstraction, encapsulation, polymorphism. If these 4 properties followed any programming language, we call it as object-oriented. How object-oriented concept is covered in our JavaScript. Okay, normally JavaScript is not object-oriented, but we are trying to achieve object-oriented concepts in our JavaScript. Okay, it is actually object-based concept, but it is trying to mimic the Java kind of programming in JavaScript. So it is about front end. We will discuss about all these concepts. Okay, constructor and object oriented concept, ES6 concepts, and spread operator. So many stuffs are there at the front end, mostly in JavaScript. Same time, we will use some case studies how we can implement some simple web application using this CSS JavaScript, and what are the advantages of our using frameworks means. Suppose you can implement same project by using without frameworks also, but when you implement very complex enterprise applications, your code is like a hell. You can implement, but after that, maintenance of your code, debugging of your code, and understanding your code, maintenance of your code, it's like hell. Okay, in further you can't able to manage when you write a very complex application without frameworks. So that's why these frameworks came into picture, and it will make your life easy to maintainable code and debugging your code. Suppose you want to change something, you can easily modify further. Suppose some enhancements if you want to do, suppose something you want to remove, because when you write some code it will be tightly coupled. Sometimes if you write manually, if you want to change something, it will affect complete your application. But if you use frameworks, they will give you the easy of editable things. Whichever you want to remove, we can remove, and whichever you want to add new features, easily you can add. So those kind of features will be available in framework. So that is about front end. Now you have to understand, I told you 3 parts for full stack developer. Front end, we have discussed a little about front end. Now we will talk about a little bit back end also. Back end actually it can be implemented. You guys are audible, right? I'm talking, I'm seeing some messages now. Somebody saying please start. I'm already started my class. Is it you guys are audible my voice? Because somebody asking, please start, sir. I'm seeing the message. I'm already continuing my class. So we are talking about backend. Now backend means actually Java or PHP or Node, or we have Django, any programming which will execute in the server side. It will give you some business logic and some response, because how client and backend will be interaction is important. The client and backend interaction will be through HTTP calls. HTTP calls means hypertext transfer protocol. Okay, whenever client requests something, it will go through the HTTP protocol. Okay, so that HTTP request will go to server will execute that request, and it will give you the some response. That response will be HTTP response. So this is the interaction between the front end and back end by HTTP request and responses. That response can be either text, either HTML, either JSON data or XML. The data between the client and the server, exchanging between server and front end, is there are four type of data can be exchanged: either HTML page, either text, either JSON data, either XML data. But you have to understand, nowadays single page application we are implementing, everything the data coming from the backend, most of the application we are using JSON data. So what is JSON data? We have to understand JavaScript object notation. It is having some key value pairs. Okay, I will show the basic syntax of JSON data because it is very important. We will always interact with JSON data always. Okay, so what I'm saying, we are always interacting backend with the JSON data, right? So yes, now what we have to understand is in old way how it is doing. In old way of applications, when client is submitting some request, backend is giving you some HTML page. That is old way of doing. Now new way of doing, we are exchanging only JSON data. The UI will be built at the front end, means your client is not dependent on how the HTML should be shown, because same server backend code I can use for different. Suppose I want to use same data for the mobile separately, I want to use for desktop separately, like that. If I want to implement different UIs, so I can use, because the data is common for the all UI. I'm implementing separately for mobile separate and desktop separately I can implement. If you have your HTML page itself, it is coming from the backend, there is no flexibility of implementation of how you want to implement. Okay, that's why now JSON concept is using, you can implement your UI as you want. Okay, so that is the basic concept using JSON data. And also single page applications, you have to understand. Single page application means in old way we are redirecting one page to another page. Now in new pages, the content only we are changing, page will not be redirected. Means single page application, content only updating, not entire page will be redirected. But by concept of routing, we will give feel like you are changing the page. Routing means some URL will be changing the URL in the top your URL, there is some indexes will be changing. Okay, the routing concept, what it will do, it will mimic, you are feeling like you are redirecting page to one page to another page, but internally what it will do, it won't redirect your page, just change the content in your web page. Means there is a container, the content of HTML will be updated only, it's not redirecting completely your page from one page to another page. That you have to understand. Okay, that's why we call single page applications. How you will achieve? By single page application, how we will implement means by JSON data, because the JavaScript object notation, it contains some array of data, array of objects. So that object we will iterate and we will generate some HTML dynamically. Okay, so that is the concept of single page application. Now we have to understand in the server side. So server side, actually in olden time JavaScript is used for only for front end, but after when Node came, this is entirely changing the game, because Node is like now server side. So server side JavaScript, we can use JavaScript at the server side, and we can connect to database. Okay, and it will produce some data to UI. Okay, that is a basic concept. So here actually backend is, we can implement anything like, because mean, when you talk about mean, right, MEAN, because mean means M means mongoose, mongoose means it is a database. Okay, A means Angular, E means Express.js. Express.js is a server in Node. Because there is an API, we will use Express.js. When you want to implement server-side programming by using Node, because Express.js is a server, it will be executed in the Node. Okay, so in the mean, Express.js is one thing. Okay, and after that, Angular is a front-end work. Angular is a front-end framework. We can mention first actually A, because front-end we will interact first A, right? Then we can say N means node. Node is a backend server programming. The server which we will use in Node is Express.js. Then database is Mongoose. Okay, Mongoose is a database. So we have to understand what is database, what is the purpose of database. Okay, what are the concepts in database. So to understand Angular, what are the basics I told? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, object-oriented concept, JavaScript oops. Okay, for Node we need JavaScript oops, because it will cover both actually. JavaScript oops, if you learn, it will be from front end and also Node side also. Other than that, some Node basics will be there. Okay, and you will hear something like npm always. Okay, npm means Node Package Manager. What it will do, it will be used for maintaining your dependencies. Dependencies means if you want to implement one application, it requires some libraries. It is depends on some libraries. To include that libraries, we will use npm, Node Package Manager. Okay, when you write npm install one command, it will download the libraries, whatever the libraries you want. Npm install means what it will do, this command, suppose you want to install some particular functionality by using some library. Okay, so you will use npm install. Suppose jQuery, you want to use jQuery. Okay, it will install jQuery library. Okay, there is a package.json, one file will be used in our package.json file. Okay, normally we will see Node projects in Angular or React or normal Node project also. You will see this common file called package.json. What it contains? It contains all the libraries. Libraries means whatever the things required. For example, in C programming, you will include include standard IO, right? Means there is a standard input output one library you will include in C programming. Like that, whatever libraries you want to use in your project, we will mention in package.json. And when you install command, when you write in pm install command in the package.json file, what are the libraries you mentioned in the JSON, it will install all the libraries in that file. Okay, suppose manually if you install npm install jQuery, it will include that library and it will make one entry in package.json. This software is installed in the package.json. It will be in automatically program will make one entry in the package.json. Whenever you want to share your your project, you no need to share node module. There is a project, there is a folder, it will generate node modules. Okay, when you see in the node project, it contains some node modules. Okay, node module, this node module contains whatever the package.json required, right? That all modules will be downloaded. So I'm not going completely in depth about node and all. So you need to understand here, front end is required these things, node required, what are the basic things. And MongoDB is a database. Here in the MongoDB we have concept called NoSQL. Okay, what is NoSQL means? We don't use database concepts like in the Mongo. So you have to understand here what is meaning of NoSQL. To understand for that, we need to understand what is SQL. Okay, what is SQL means? Structured query language. SQL is a structured language, structured query language. We will use in databases like Oracle, MySQL, SQL Server, and PostgreSQL. Okay, these are the famous databases normally we will use. Okay, Oracle, MySQL, SQL Server, and PostgreSQL. These are the common databases we will use to store your data. So simply make it this way. Suppose you want to create your Facebook profile. You will enter some username, password, and you click on save, right? When you click on save, it will go to server. This server can be anything like we have PHP based and Java based or Node based or Django. Django is a Python based web framework to develop web application in the backend side. Okay, so this is also very famous nowadays. So PHP, Java, Node, or Django. So these all are programming languages, and also you can say somebody from Microsoft C Sharp. Okay, C Sharp also we can mention, .NET environment. Okay, so these are all server side. These servers can be executed, these all programs can be executed any servers, like we have different servers. Okay, so why we call it as a these programmers programming is a server side programming. It will be executed any servers. For example, we have Tomcat server and WebSphere and JBoss. Okay, and we have this Express.js is a server. It will be executed in the node. Okay, so like that we have different servers. These programming languages will be executed in the servers. Okay, and it will give you some output when you call from the client side. When you call some URL, if you type right in the browser, right, that URL when you type and you're hitting some button, it will call some backend API, for example get results or something. So it will give you the output. The output will be HTTP request. Sorry, output is a response. When you got HTTP request, it will give you HTTP response. Okay, so here you need to understand some concept like web there are different category of servers. Okay, web servers and application servers. What is the difference between application server and web server? Web server will do simple thing. It just getting the request and giving the response. But application server, it having some features. For example, if you want to implement some security, SSLs, HTTPS, have you heard HTTPS? There is a difference between HTTP and HTTPS. When you want to implement secured websites, you need to use HTTPS. Okay, in the URL, when you see HTTPS banking URL and all, you will see the starting with HTTPS. Okay, HTTPS, yes means secured. So for that we required, there is a concept called SSL. SSL means secured socket layer. So how it will be implemented when you use any application, WebSphere and JBoss, those kind of application servers, it having the concept of security, and also it having concept of scalability. Scalability means, suppose if you want to improve the performance of your web application, it require there is a concept of containers, means it will manage duplication of your servers. Suppose Google and all, they will use clusters and all. They will have different kind of remote servers at India and US, and every country they have different kind of servers to manage this because Google is accessed by so many people, right? How they will achieve this performance? So those kind of performances, the server maintenance and all, everything will be done by this application server. So simply remember, application server having some features like scalability, security. These are the two examples. Like that, a number of other features will be available for application servers. It's based on your choice. Suppose you are implementing simple web application, you can use Tomcat or Express.js or something. But if you are implementing very complex and more what you call load balancing and all those things, if you want to achieve, like JBoss or WebSphere, those kind of servers we can use. Okay, but internally the basic thing what they will do, it will give you the HTTP response only at last. Okay, but it's having some features. So this is about some basics of about server to understand what are things it will do. Okay, so after that we need to understand little more about JSON, right? I will show you the JSON data, what it is, what it will do. Now we will come back again to database side, because the server will be interact with your database. We are telling, right? Suppose you entered some data in your Facebook profile and you clicking on save button, it is going to server, any server programming or any server it will hit, there is some logic. Suppose you are creating new profile, means what it is do, it has to take the data and the data should be saved in somewhere, right? The data will be stored somewhere. So to store the data, we need to use some database, because database is it is kind of go down, store your goods. For example, in our context, in a web application context, our goods is data. The data will pass from here to this database. So this database should be like based on again requirements. For example, I will say database comparison this way. Okay, why Oracle, why MySQL? I can compare each database this way. You have to think. I'm giving one simple example. Rat and elephant, when you compare, rat is very faster. Elephant is slow, right? But when you tie one, what you call, one stone to rat tail, which will move faster, elephant or rat? When you tie small stone to rat, it won't move, right? But even the elephant will be moved. So based on your data and complexity, we need to choose, even though it is slow but it is handling more weight, then you can choose elephant. But if your data is very less, it's like rat, if you want faster, you can use rat only. Okay, so based on your features, based on your data, you need to choose rat or elephant. Okay, suppose you want to carry more data, more performance, more things, you will choose elephant. Here when you compare Oracle and MySQL is the rat, Oracle is an elephant. Okay, and again Oracle and SQL Server, which one is better? There is one concept of costing and all, because SQL Server, Oracle, when you compare the cost, both are almost similar. Only thing, the cost SQL Server is costlier than Oracle. Okay, and again PostgreSQL, when you compare MySQL, these two are almost similar. Okay, so based on this, these are like different databases. The common concept we will use in these databases is called SQL. Okay, because people will confuse about these names. MySQL, SQL Server is the name of Microsoft database name. Okay, and PostgreSQL one database name, MySQL is database, and Oracle also database. These are the names of databases. The concept we will use in these databases is called SQL. Means there is a, you have here some queries like select star from some table name students. Okay, select star from students. What is this query means? Actually in database, the data will be stored in the form of tables. Okay, the table contains rows and columns. The basic concept of tables is rows and columns, right? So in normal databases, the data will be stored in the form of table. Now I want to explain you NoSQL. NoSQL means there is no concept of SQL, means there is no tables. So MongoDB is a database. The concept of NoSQL means there is no tables in MongoDB. Okay, so MongoDB is one example which don't use tables, but the data in the form of JSON data. See, everywhere we required JavaScript object notation, means you need to understand JavaScript basic object oriented concept in 3 layers: in the front end, in the node, in the database. 3 places you have to understand JavaScript is very important. So we will show now what is JSON. I will show, just wait. And now you have to understand MongoDB is a database. It won't use table because this is SQL concept. The difference between SQL and normal NoSQL is it won't use table concept, it will use JSON data. Okay, MongoDB uses data in the form of JSON. This is clear, right? But you have to understand both, because sometime we will use PostgreSQL, these databases also. That's why at least you should have some basic SQL concept. Okay, SQL is a concept used in the databases. Okay, for example, I given this select star from students. The syntax will be almost same in all the databases. Only just 10% of syntax, some keywords will be vary in this database. One more famous database also I can mention here, that is DB2. It is used in mainframes, IBM. Okay, DB2 is a database name. It is used for IBM database. It is used in mainframes for the heavy data, like for example banking transaction you are doing, whatever banking transaction will be manipulated by mainframes. That mainframe uses DB2 because it is having billions of information and transactions information. To handle that kind of huge data, DB2 is the best database. Okay, but not for implementing some simple web application. We don't use DB2. Okay, we will use MySQL or PostgreSQL for the simple web applications, some registration purpose, some sample applications and all. We will use MySQL and PostgreSQL. Here we have the concept of RDBMS also. RDBMS. Okay. For this RDBMS, we have some advanced concepts to understand what is what you call that is the normal forms, and all those concepts will come again. Okay, I'm not going deep about RDBMS concept. Just know the basic difference between NoSQL and SQL. Now I will show you one simple example, JSON data. Okay, so JSON data example is, I can say simply like this, because object means when you see anything like this in between the curly brackets, it is called object. And when you see something like this, name, value, something Rajesh, and one more property, age. Okay, when you see any curly braces between, that is called object. It contains some key values. This is one key, this is one value, and after comma there is one more key, age and value. Okay, so this is simple one object. So this simple object, I can call it as a JSON object, because your data will be stored in the form of this structure. Okay, whenever you see anything like this bracket, this is called an array. For example, I have array of objects. Okay, means array contains normal array. You guys know, right? Any array, when you say an array in the JavaScript, 1, 2, 3, this is numbers. Okay, for example, I'm declaring one simple array where numbers, this is numbers array contains 1, 2, 3, right? Like that, I have data in the form of array of objects. Array of objects means, for example, this is one single object. Okay, now I have one more object, comma separated. This is second object, this is third object. Suppose I have one student Rajesh and another student Ramesh. His age is 27, and one more student, something Suresh. Okay, if you see like this, we have list of students. It is in the form of one array. Okay, our data will be stored in the form of array of objects in the Mongodb database. So you have to understand here the syntax of JSON data is in the form of key values, and it is an object. Suppose if you have completely instead of array, completely this is in the form of like this, we can say data, because you will see these two categories. Sometimes your data will be like this. Data is one key, the value is array of objects like this. Because now you don't understand the syntax. I know if you are very completely new for objects and arrays, it's okay, but I'm just giving you the initially one idea how your data will be stored in Mongo's database. MongoDB, the data will be stored in the form of JSON object. JSON object means when you see anything starting like this, it is a non-object. Okay, and when you say anything this format, it is an array. Okay, array contains list of items. In our context here, this array contains array of objects. Okay, means this is, suppose for example 1, 2, 3, I give an example, right? Here imagine this up to here, it is 1. Okay, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. Okay, so it contains, the data array contains 3 objects. Okay, so this is clear, right? So whenever you are sending any data to backend and also storing data in the database, we always dealing with this kind of syntaxes only. So for that, we need to understand the concept of object, what is object in JavaScript, and deep understanding about objects, object oriented concept. Then we have to understand arrays. Okay, so these are the things we need to learn very depth. Okay, to go through all these concepts, Angular or Node or Mongoose. Okay, So you are clear right now. Mean means, what is the meaning of mean? Means mongoose is m for in the mean concept, what I'm saying, m for mongoose, a for angular, node in n for node. Okay, he means express.js is the server. Okay, this concept clear right now? Because initially when you're talking about, we need to focus about HTML5, what is HTML5 and all. So in HTML5 actually we have features of session storage, local storage, and why we need to use session storage, what is the difference between session storage and local storage. Because we have old way of doing is cookies having the actually use it for server side. When you want to send anything like for example, if you want to manage some session, we will use old time cookies. Now we have the concept of session storage and local storage. Session storage and local storage difference is, when you open your browser, until your browser is alive, that session storage data will be available. When you use local storage, your data will be permanently stored in your computer. Okay, so it is not secure. When you use local storage, it is not secure. Session storage is secure because when you close your browser itself, the data will be vanished. Okay, so better to use session storage. And we have some concept when you use HTTP request and all, we need to understand some terminologies like get method and post method, put method, comma delete. Okay, so normally we'll deal with, whenever from the front end, when you interact with backend, we'll use these methods. We'll go in depth about what is the difference between get and post. Okay, so get is always will be shown your data in the URL. Post will be in the form of body. Okay, we'll see the example, then you will understand what is the basic difference. Okay, but post is secure, get is not secure. Clear? In HTML5 also we have so many features like predefined input types like email tag, email type, date type, and also we have canvas tag. In HTML5 there is a canvas tag. It is used for implementing some graphics. Okay, suppose you want to draw any pie diagram, chart diagrams, we need to use canvas tag. Okay, so video tag, audio tag, those are the different advanced tags will be available in the HTML5. And also HTML5 come up with semantic web application concept. Means if you see in HTML5, we have some predefined tags called header tag and footer tag. Okay, so normally in old way of implementation, we used to write our own classes IDs for the tags. But instead of that, the HTML5 come up with this header and footer tag. It is giving you some meaningful tag names. Okay, what is the purpose of this? It is making your web application SEO friendly. SEO friendly means search engine optimization, because whenever a search engine see your application, it is scanning your application based on this code and whatever the tags used here. So when you use the semantic tags, SEO will make your application the rating more, then your application will come under Google search in the search engine. It will at the top. So when you use these semantic tags, it will give you the some meaningful, and coding wise also, somebody seeing your code, they will understand, okay, this is header, this is footer and all. That is one kind of one advantage. Other one is SEO friendly. Okay, these are two things it will be achieved by using semantic tags. Okay, we have section tag, title tag, so many tags are there. Okay, so these tags will be introduced in HTML5. And there is a concept of accessibility. Okay, what is accessibility means? Suppose some blind people can be use your web application without seeing. They will use some voice means website reading. There is a voice readers. It will read your web application and it will tell, it is username, please tell username, means that voice it will come, and the blind people will voice by voice based, they will enter the input. Okay, so that is called accessibility. When you write your HTML code, you have to maintain some accessibility rules. Okay, means it can be accessible by blind people by using website reading applications. So that concept accessibility is very important nowadays. Okay, so the accessibility concept is, for example, when you use image tag, right, img tag, there is a tag called ALT is equal to, normally we don't write anything here, but the ALT will give you some information to the that voice website reading. Suppose you tell this is image for profile. Okay, normally src equal to, you will give something. Src means that image path, that is the basic stuff, but this alt is used for accessibility concept, because this alt will tell this image is used for profile picture or something like that. It will explain to the blind person. Okay, so the concept of accessibility is very important. That concept also came in HTML5. Now, so you are saying, right, these are the concept will be covered in HTML5, and in JavaScript also we have the concept of ES6 and all, we will be covered. Okay, so that's what I'm stopping. I think first day itself, if I go in depth, you guys get confused. Now just understanding about what is Angular and all, I want you guys to understand. Any questions still here? Now you got one idea, right, what is means. Okay, so I'm stopping my class here now, because I don't want you guys give more things in the first day, then you will feel heavy. Okay, so we'll see in the next classes in depth concept.